For nearly 3 decades, Claude Lemieux was known as one of the toughest and most feared competitors in hockey. He played through pain, delivered punishing hits, fought through injuries, and built a reputation as a player willing to do whatever it took to win. Fans admired his intensity. Opponents hated facing him. And by the time his career ended, he had become a 4-time Stanley Cup champion whose name would always be remembered in NHL history. But now, after his tragic death at the age of 60, a different conversation has begun. It is no longer only about championships, rivalries, or unforgettable playoff moments. It is about the hidden cost of the sport he loved. Just days after Claude's death shocked the hockey world, his family revealed a decision that immediately captured national attention. They announced that his brain would be donated to the Unite Brain Bank at the Boston University CTE Center for scientific research into the long-term effects of repetitive head impacts and traumatic brain injuries. The family said they hoped Claude's life could continue helping others, even after his passing. They also made it clear that no conclusions should be drawn about any medical diagnosis at this time, emphasizing that the donation was meant to support science and future generations of athletes. For many fans, the announcement felt emotional, because suddenly, people began looking back at Claude's career through a completely different lens. Throughout his 21 NHL seasons, Lemieux played nearly 1,500 games and competed during one of the most physically brutal eras in professional hockey. This was a time when massive hits were celebrated, fighting was common, and players were often expected to keep playing even after suffering head injuries. Concussions were not discussed the way they are today. Many athletes simply called it getting your bell rung and returned to the ice as quickly as possible. Claude played directly in the middle of that culture. His style was relentless, aggressive, physical, fearless. He became famous not only for scoring crucial goals, but also for creating chaos on the ice. He frustrated opponents, delivered hard checks, and thrived in the emotional intensity of playoff hockey. Some fans loved him. Others viewed him as a villain. But nobody questioned his toughness. Looking back now, many people are asking a painful question. What kind of damage did those years leave behind? The family's decision to donate his brain has brought renewed attention to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, commonly known as CTE. The condition is associated with repeated head trauma and can only be definitively diagnosed after death. Researchers continue studying how repetitive impacts may affect mood, memory, behavior, and long-term brain health. The Lemieux family specifically said they wanted his case to contribute to greater understanding, more honest conversations, and better protection for athletes and families in the years ahead. That statement revealed something important. This was not simply a private family decision. It was also a message. A message that the conversation about athlete brain health is far from over. For years, discussions about CTE focused primarily on football. Hockey often received less attention despite being a sport where players routinely experience collisions, falls, and repeated impacts over long careers. Claude's story has now placed hockey directly into that conversation once again. What makes everything even more heartbreaking is how unexpected his death seemed to many people. Just days before his passing, Claude had appeared publicly in Montreal, proudly carrying the ceremonial torch into the Bell Center before a playoff game involving the Canadiens. Fans cheered him. Cameras followed him. He looked like a beloved hockey legend being celebrated by the city, where his remarkable NHL journey began. Very few people could have imagined what would happen only days later. That contrast has left many fans deeply shaken. One moment, he was standing in front of thousands of cheering supporters. The next, the hockey world was mourning him. As tributes poured in, former teammates, opponents, and fans remembered different sides of Claude. Some spoke about his fierce competitiveness. Others remembered his sense of humor. Many described his loyalty and passion for the game. After retirement, he remained involved in hockey by helping younger players navigate professional careers as an agent. According to his family, he remained committed to supporting the next generation long after his own playing days ended. Perhaps that is one reason the family chose this path. They believed Claude would want to continue helping athletes. Even now, even after death. The decision to allow researchers not only to study his brain, but also to publicly identify him by name was especially significant. The family understood that attaching Claude's name to future findings could create uncomfortable discussions. Yet they chose transparency anyway because they hoped it could lead to answers for other families facing similar questions. That level of openness requires courage, especially during grief, especially when the world is watching. For many people, this story is no longer simply about Claude Lemieux, the hockey player. It is about Claude Lemieux, the father, husband, friend, and human being. It is about understanding what athletes endure long after the cheering stops. It is about asking whether sports have done enough to protect the people who sacrifice their bodies and minds for competition. And it is about one family choosing to transform unimaginable pain into something that might help others in the future. Today, Claude's legacy remains complex. He will always be remembered as a fierce competitor and playoff hero. But now another chapter has been added to his story. A chapter focused not on winning championships, but on helping science uncover truths that could protect future generations. And for many fans, that final act may become one of the most meaningful contributions of his entire life. For decades, Claude Lemieux was known as one of hockey's fiercest competitors. Fans remembered the championships, the rivalries, the playoff heroics, and the fearless style that made him one of the most unforgettable players of his era. But after his tragic death at age 60, the conversation surrounding Claude changed completely. Suddenly, people were no longer talking only about goals, Stanley Cups, or famous moments on the ice. They were talking about something far more painful, the possibility that years of punishment to his body and brain may have left invisible scars nobody fully understood. When authorities confirmed that Claude had died by suicide, shock spread throughout the hockey world. Friends, former teammates, and fans struggled to process the news. Just days earlier, he had appeared publicly in Montreal, proudly carrying the ceremonial torch before a playoff game at the Bell Center. He looked energized. He smiled for cameras. Thousands of fans cheered as one of the franchise's legendary figures stepped onto the ice once again. Nobody watching that moment could have imagined the heartbreaking news that would follow only days later. As tributes poured in, Claude's family made an announcement that immediately captured national attention. They revealed that his brain would be donated to the Unite Brain Bank at the Boston University CTE Center, one of the leading institutions studying the long-term effects of repetitive head trauma and traumatic brain injuries. The family explained that they hoped Claude's life could continue helping others through scientific research. They also emphasized that no conclusions should be made about any diagnosis at this time, and that the donation was intended to support future understanding rather than create assumptions. That decision transformed the story from a personal tragedy into something much larger. Suddenly, hockey fans around the world began revisiting Claude's entire career with different eyes. They remembered the brutal collisions, the fights, the playoff battles, the physical sacrifices that players from his era endured almost every night. During the 1980s and 1990s, hockey culture often rewarded toughness above all else. Players were expected to absorb punishment and continue playing. Head injuries were rarely discussed openly. Concussions were frequently minimized. Many athletes simply returned to the ice because that was what competitors were expected to do. Claude embodied that mentality. He played nearly 1,500 NHL games over 21 seasons and became famous for his willingness to enter dangerous situations without hesitation. He delivered hard hits. He absorbed punishment. He fought through pain. His aggressive style helped him win 4 Stanley Cups and become one of the most successful playoff performers in league history. Yet the same qualities that made him legendary may also have exposed him to years of repeated impacts that scientists are still trying to fully understand today. For many former players, the discussion surrounding brain injuries remains deeply emotional because the damage is often invisible. Broken bones heal. Torn muscles recover. But the effects of repeated trauma to the brain can remain hidden for years before symptoms begin appearing. Researchers studying CTE continue investigating how repetitive head impacts may affect memory, mood, behavior, depression, and long-term neurological health. The condition can only be definitively diagnosed after death, which is one reason brain donations remain so important to scientific research. The Lemieux family understood that reality. By donating Claude's brain and allowing researchers to publicly connect findings to his name, they made a decision that required extraordinary courage. Most families facing grief want privacy. They want space to mourn. Yet Claude's family chose transparency because they believed his story might help other athletes and families searching for answers. In their statement, they explained that Claude dedicated much of his post-playing life to helping younger players through his work as an agent. They believed this final contribution reflected the same desire to support future generations. Many fans found that decision incredibly moving, because it suggested that even after death, Claude's legacy could continue making a difference. As the story spread, conversations about mental health and athlete well-being intensified across the hockey community. Former players began sharing personal experiences involving concussions, depression, anxiety, and the emotional challenges that sometimes emerge years after retirement. Some described struggles they had never discussed publicly before. Others reflected on how different the culture surrounding head injuries was during their playing careers compared to today. The discussion extended far beyond hockey. Families of football players, boxers, mixed martial artists, and athletes from other contact sports also joined the conversation. Many understood the same fears. They knew what it felt like to wonder whether years of competition might carry consequences that only become visible later in life. What made Claude's story especially heartbreaking was the contrast between his public image and the tragedy that followed. Yet stories like this remind people that emotional struggles often remain hidden beneath the surface. Someone can appear strong publicly while carrying private pain nobody else fully sees. That truth has become one of the most important parts of the conversation surrounding athlete mental health in recent years. Many described him as a larger-than-life personality whose presence could instantly change the energy of a room. Those personal memories painted a fuller picture than the aggressive image many fans remembered from his playing days. Because behind every athlete exists a human being. Instead, it could contribute to discoveries that may one day help protect future athletes, improve understanding of brain injuries, and encourage more honest conversations about mental health and the hidden costs of professional sports. For many fans, that may become one of the most meaningful chapters of Claude's legacy. But the possibility that his final contribution could help save lives long after the cheering stopped